Welcome to the Always for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wanjerabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Always for the New Age podcast. I'm Hannah, your host, and today we have such an exciting guest with us to teach us a little bit about home herbalism and ethical sourcing of plants. This is Kat Green from Everyday Empowered. Hi Kat, hello.
Hi Hannah, how's it going?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Kat is, I just wanted to give you a little rundown. Kat is a herbal entrepreneur, a home herbalist, community herbalist, mother, and the founder of the amazing Sunny Coast HerbFest, which is so cool. And we'll definitely talk a little bit to that later, I hope. But welcome to the podcast, Kat. And I thought maybe we would just jump in and maybe you could tell people how you originally got started in herbalism.
Thanks. I'm actually super excited to talk to you. It's like podcast is such a gift to just be able to sit down and have a good chat with people for a while. So thank you so much for having me. My story is maybe a little bit dramatic because it starts with like a medical evacuation from Indonesia after 3 months in hospital over there, or in and out of hospital because I kept discharging myself. Clearly wasn't on the mend, so I got medevaced home to Australia and put in quarantine in hospital here. And I had 2 tropical diseases, infectious tropical diseases. So I was, my infectious disease specialist really liked me. He thought I was very interesting. So, you know, you're always onto a good thing when you're of interest to your medical staff.
Totally.
And that kind of just like, I went to a talk soon after that at the Brisbane Ideas Festival. I was living in Brisbane at the time, and it was about the health of the soil and how if there's nutrients aren't in the soil, then they're not in us. And I was so interested at that time about rebuilding my body. And I really got into the local food movement after that. And it just kind of, everything just cascaded from there, like just realizing that the health of the environment around us affects our health. And then how we live every day affects our health. And you know, like I didn't really walk for 3 months because I was so weak. So I had to rebuild so many systems of my body and the muscle mass. I just really learned from that it's not about like building health is just the tiny things we do every day. They make a big difference. Like no one else is going to come into our lives and do that for us. It's kind of up to us to believe that what we do makes a difference and that we can make a difference and that we have the skills to be able to do that. So that's kind of how it all started, just me needing to rebuild from the ground up. Like as I always joke, like I've had to relearn how to talk in my life after like chronic laryngitis. I've had to learn how to walk. I've had to relearn all of these really basic things that you learn in, you know, as a toddler.
Yeah. That would give you such like a strong appreciation for foundational learning, right?
Yeah, it definitely has informed my approach to, you know, I think we're so quick to think that the tiniest thing can harm us. Like how many of us are scared of things that might be in our food or pollutants that are in, you know, our kind of home furnishings. And yet we don't believe that similarly small can be beneficial to us. So we don't believe that getting an extra 15 minutes of sleep a night can really make a difference, or doing 1 minute of breath work to help break that stress cycle throughout a day can make a difference. But I kind of think that both are true, right? Like if tiny things can hurt us, which I actually think we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, but then tiny things can make a big difference as well. And it's really just, I really love this style of herbalism, which I call grandma herbalism. And it's that. Like, I know, right? It's kind of like...
I'm a grandma, professed grandma over here. Yeah.
And if you listeners are self-confessed grandmas as well, like, let us know in the comments.
Most of the audience.
Okay, great. I'm really excited. So we're amongst friends.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just think it's the basic things, and it's just really simple skills that most of us didn't grow up learning. And once we know them, they're so easy to incorporate into every day. And it's just learning, tiny little things and then knowing how to apply them in your daily life. And it does take a little bit of time to learn it and piece it all together and figure out what that means for you in your own home. But I think that's something that, we can all do together. And there's so much support for that these days, and there's so much like momentum, which is so exciting, like podcasts like this, which is sharing those wisdoms and just all of the stuff that we're all doing together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the community herbalism movement in Australia is really taking off, and it's such a special time to be a part of a community like this. Everyone is so supportive, and there's so many avenues to learn things without, it is great to invest in people's courses, and I know you have courses, and I would like to put some out in the future, and I invest in other people's courses. I'm sure you do too. But there is also so much beauty in the willingness of people to share the basic, really important ways that we can take care of ourselves and our families. And there's just so many ways to access that now through the internet, through things like the Rad Herb Zine, through, Instagram, Facebook, just so many different, newsletters that have such valuable information. So it's such an exciting time to be a herbalist, and a grandma herbalist at that. Bring on all the people. Come to our podcast if you like just, hot cups of herbal tea, cozy socks, and a good fireplace,
And a good book. You got to have a book. And go to bed early.
Yes, absolutely. I'm completely on the same page. So I didn't know that about how you got started. So that's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that. You have a business called Everyday Empowered, correct? And you are teaching people these foundational skills that that are so valuable for being able to take care of our families and our communities as well. Coming back to this space of being able to share and collaborate with each other and help each other out, just, come back to a community mindset. So let's talk about home herbalism. Hi everybody, it's Hannah jumping into this section of the episode to let you know that this week's episode is actually brought to you by my own little family business, Grown Botanicals. At Grown Botanicals, we offer really beautifully formulated, handcrafted, organic, herbal tonic blends. So we do the actual tonic blends that are medicinal mushroom and cacao blend that you mix with warm milk and have as a hot drink every day. That really supports your immune system, your energy, your gut health, your hormones, your nervous system, you name it. It's pretty much good for everything. We have 4 different flavors of those. And then we also have really mindfully crafted organic herbal tea blends. We do high potency, essential oil free, infused herbal oils and salves as well. And then we have a great selection from really incredible Australian small businesses. So we have some locally sourced organic beeswax candles and just so much more. So I encourage you to jump onto the website and have a play. You might happen to see our new amber glass tonic blend jars. So this is my peppermint potion here. And then we also have the refill bags, which look like this. And this original tonic blend is actually one of our cult favorites. So this was the original for a reason. It has a new updated blend of 10 different medicinal mushrooms in here. It's sweetened with organic maple sugar, as all of our blends are. And I really encourage you to give it a try. If you would like to try something out for the first time, definitely use the code OLDWAYS10. And you can go to www.grownbotanicals.com.au, or you can find the website linked below in the show notes or on Instagram. And I hope that you love them. I'd love to send you a little handwritten note and some beautiful rose petals with your order. And I hope to see your name pop up soon. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate the support, and we'll get back to the episode. I've already mentioned this to you before the podcast started, but in your Instagram bio, you have Wing Woman for Home Herbalist, which I think is so great. And so what is home herbalism to you? What does it mean? What does it look like in your home in some really basic ways? For those people who may have no clue what home herbalism is at all, could you explain it to us a little bit?
Yeah, I guess it's such an interesting question because it's such a term that I'm so familiar with. I don't know, like I love it when people are like, what is this? And I'm like, doesn't everyone know that? But I guess people call it different things. And so if anyone is listening, like write in, or I don't know, post a comment or whatever, wherever Hannah shares this, and tell me, what do you call it in your home? Like, is it, I don't know, like what do people call this? Because I think it is about using herbal medicine and simple like lifestyle self-care strategies in our home to build general vitality and well-being. And that can be small and it can be big. It can look like having a simple cup of sage tea or a sage infused honey when you've got a sore throat. So it can be caring for colds and coughs using herbs. It can be growing culinary herbs in your garden so that you can make pesto or put them in your food. It could look like making your own infused oils or making your own infused salves or creams. It's kind of like anything that you do to care for yourself in daily life. And for me, the basis of that is using herbs, but I believe in the vitalist tradition of herbalism. Like, I believe that herbs are only one part of being a really good home herbalist. And to be honest, I feel like I'm a really funny herbal educator, because I'm always like, yo, like, you want to learn about the herbs, but I want to tell you that sometimes you don't need herbs.
Yes.
Sometimes
that makes a great herbalist. I think that makes a really fantastic herbalist, being able to acknowledge that we're not using herbs as Band-Aid or in like a green allopathic way. We're using them in a really sustainable way that makes sense for our lifestyle at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what I think. You've captured that so well. And I do think, sometimes, I teach this a lot, and I love talking about like lifestyle pillars, the core foundations that create and build health in everyday life. And then it's about using herbs to support those rather than using those as band-aids to cover up an unsustainable life. And it's not about being perfect in any one area. Like, there's a lot of focus on having the perfect diet and really, being very worried about what we can eat, or being super unsure about what we're allowed or what makes us feel good, or sourcing ingredients. But if we're really good in one area but don't think about the other areas, we still can't be healthy. Like, I kind of have a real jack of all trades approach. Like, I think that health is built by being, pretty good in like most of the areas, but that's probably a better approach than being like perfect in one and never thinking about the others. And so for me, that looks like having a good quality sleep most of the time, and not being perfect, like just doing your best and not stressing out, but just doing your best. Because I'm not sleeping as well at the moment, because I'm like up at 3 and being like, oh, I've got so much to do for HerbFest. Let me write this list.
Sure, there is a lot to do, to be fair.
It's 5 weeks out. It's a lot to do.
Yeah. I think, that is absolutely true. And I've always looked at like balance, because I think people have a really complex relationship with the word balance. But to me, and the way that I explain it to clients, balance is really, if you look at, you're in the middle and then there's a rubber band, or here's your center and you're tied to your center with a rubber band, and you maybe go out and, some things are also, in my opinion, I know this is controversial, but really good for the soul, and that's medicine too. So if you want to go out and have ice cream with your kids one night, I think go do it. And, the rubber band stretches a little, but it's really about how well you care for yourself most of the time, so that you can quickly come back to center, back to what your default setting is for what makes you feel really good and helps your body, mind, and soul run beautifully, rather than going, I did that thing. Oh, I feel really bad about it. Oh, this is terrible. No, it's all over. Might as well eat that way for the rest of the week. Oh, it's all done. It's actually, balance is if we can reframe it in our minds, it's not perfectionism. It's actually just having balance, like being able to do both and, come back to center quickly and know. I think the key to that, though, is really learning within yourself, right, as to what that is, your center, what helps you stay well, and knowing what that is for you is really important. Is that what you would say as well?
Yeah, there's so many things I want to say to that. Like, you've just so many directions we could go. Like, which one? But I think, I often describe this, this active home herbalism is really built on relationship to self. It's being self-attuned. And I'm really not into hard and fast rules, because I think that we change, and what is working for us in one stage of life might not work for us later. So, I know at some times of the year, I might be more prone to congestion in my sinuses, which could become a sinus infection. And so I might cut back on dairy at those times so that I'm not creating more mucus. And that is a simple way that I'm responding to my body in that moment. And it's not a hard and fast rule. I'll eat dairy at other times. I might even eat dairy at that stage. I might just cut back. You can still go out for ice cream, but you might get a gelato, you know, to use that example. Or I might say, like, I'm always saying to my kids, like, we don't have hard and fast rules for what we eat. You know, we eat whole foods. We try to eat as many vegetables as we can. I'm not going to say no to treats. I think that when you eat treats, you should eat them with wild abandon. Like, you should
Yes.
enjoy the hell out of them and know that they don't happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But also that if you have been eating them a couple of days in a row, say you've had a party and then you've just had takeout because you've been at the beach and it was beautiful, you know, then on the next day you might really try to come back to those standards, which help you cultivate and build health. So for me, it's rather than, you know, saying, oh, we never do this or we always do this. It's saying, well, here's what we do 80% of the time. And we know that that's going to keep us well. But then there's going to be certain seasons, like in winter, we're not going to have ice cream as much because it's cold and it will dampen our digestive fire. But we're going to be having more warming soups. And so maybe we'll go out for cake, you know, to follow on from your example of eating things. But it's really just me too. But it's really about coming back to that relationship with self and knowing what is right for you, and that's going to change. You know, you'll have kind of like thresholds that you'll move between. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense of people, or if they kind of can resonate with that and how they experience their life. But I also think we're very resilient in many ways, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hearing, and I completely agree, that a key foundation for home herbalism isn't actually to do with herbs much at all, but is very much to do with being able to tune in with yourself and really understand yourself very intimately to know what is best for yourself. And herbalism, I think it's very trendy right now, right? Like herbalism is trendy. And, you know, there's lots of biohackers using ashwagandha for everything. And that's all, you know, it is what it is, right? But I think, you know, if you speak to any folk herbalist, really traditional herbalist, someone who's been doing it for 40, 50, 60 years, they'll tell you that it's much more than just a plant, right? It's not only is it just, it's also a relationship with a plant, which takes it to a whole other place, but it is your way that you're taking care of yourself around plants, and plants, you know, that's something you can work with them to achieve, you know, really beautiful, super vibrant health on a different level. But those foundations of being able to drink water, go to bed at the right time, you know, get outside and breathe some fresh air, touch our feet to the earth, all of these things, eat whole foods, really important. And, you know, I do know people who spend lots and lots of money on an organic butcher box, and then they go out and party and they smoke cigarettes and, you know, do other things that hurt their bodies. And realistically, I love Dr. Joe used to say, he's a guy online, he used to say you can't detox before you know tox. And I think that kind of filters out into other areas of life as well, because there's so many naturopaths I know who, while I was studying, they would go out and have a cigarette in their lunch break. And that to me never made sense, because, you know, that's not knowing how your body runs best, and it's not taking care of those foundational things. So you can take a supplement, you can take a herb, but it really doesn't matter if you're not taking care of those really basic, crucial needs that help your body function day to day, because a herb's not going to fix that, not forever anyway. So do you have any tips for people who don't, because I know for like people like you and I, we've done this for a long time, and we've done that investigation and tuning in with self, and that intuitive work to be able to know what that is. But if somebody was completely new to it, which we do get some people who are very new to things, do you have any tips that, because intuition is a tricky thing, and I think they kind of weave in together, this knowing and intuition. How would somebody start to figure out what works for them if they had no idea? Like if someone's coming from a completely Western standard diet and lifestyle and they have no clue about any of this, is there one or two simple ways where they could, do you do visualization? Would you recommend that? Is there any way that they could start to build that relationship with themselves?
It's a really good question. And it's something that I'm going to be exploring more in my work in the next year. So I'll probably be able to come back on the podcast in a year and have a very clearer answer to that. I think the first thing, and like, as you said, we have been doing this for a long time, so it does become more intuitive. But I do think it is just about, at the start, like having grace with yourself and just knowing that it will take time and that you don't need to do it perfectly, and you know, you will totally make mistakes and learn things, and often you'll learn through the mistakes, right? That is one of the best ways to learn. Like, oh, I ate that bag of chips and now I feel like rubbish.
Yeah.
probably shouldn't do that. But then at the same time, we're human. And if that was actually like a stress response and you were eating that bag of chips to numb out from stress, you're probably going to do it again.
Yeah.
And so to also just see that there's no such thing as perfectionism in this. Like, we're all humans and we're all learning. And if that's just part of our journey, you know. So just to kind of preface that at the start, that it's not about having perfect habits and never making mistakes. But also just to be in the habit, like once a day, sit down with yourself for 1 minute, maybe over a cup of tea, maybe while you're brushing your teeth in the morning, and just looking yourself in the eye or just sitting quietly and saying, what do I need today? You know, like, how do I feel right now? And actually just taking that minute, and you might start by doing 5 slow, deep breaths and then saying, how do I feel right now? And actually acknowledging how you feel. Because I think sometimes we don't actually take time to check in with ourselves. And so we don't know how tired we are, or we don't notice if we're like the early red flags of irritation, or we don't notice things building up. So it's kind of just, and that will, you know, be more intuitive over time. But then you can say, okay, that's how I feel. What do I need to take care of myself today? It can be as simple as that. And it might be, I'm tired. Okay, so I need to make sure that I eat enough protein to fuel me, try and stay away from sugary snacks, make sure I get my vegetables and stay hydrated and go to bed early.
Yeah.
And maybe you have herbs to help you with that. Or maybe, I'm really stressed about this thing. So then you go, okay, well, I want to have some herbs that will help me with stress and help me relax today. And so it's just about identifying, how do you feel and what do you need to take care of yourself? And if you really are new and just starting, like, just start with the basics. Like, we've already kind of covered the basic lifestyle pillars you need to think about every day, like getting enough movement, laughing, you know, nourishing your body well, spending time with friends, being outside in the sunlight, getting a good sleep, and like having a hobby, you know. So you don't need to do all of those, but maybe just pick one and say, what can I do? How can I support myself in this area this day or this week? And really break it down into like 5-minute chunks of intention. Because I think at the start we can be really overwhelmed and think we need to do it all. But yeah, I just think go slow, pick one area that would feel supportive, and it might be an easy win. Like, it doesn't need to be the hardest, but it could be like, maybe you put on a comedy show, like you make a cup of stress busting tea. So you're going to calm your nervous system down. You put on 5 minutes of comedy, and then that's your self-care for the day. You're using your herbs to support your nervous system down regulation. You're using the comedy to make you laugh, and again, helping you shift nervous system states. And then you might sleep better that night. Or maybe you have your cup of tea, which is going to support digestion. You could have a cup of chamomile or peppermint or fennel tea after your meal to help your digestive system. And maybe you call a friend, because that's going to help you to fill your emotional cup. So it could be simple things, or it could be harder things. Like, you know, you've got a goal and you go, well, I really know I need to work on this area. Like, that could be where you start. And I think that's going to be part of everyone's story. Like, it's not about starting in one place, but about realizing that as jack of all trades, like people, we need to work on them all, and we don't need to do them all at once. And you can just start with whatever your entry point is, and know that because everything's got all these bidirectional feedback systems in the body, or cyclic feedback systems, intervening here is actually going to have an impact over here as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And, you know, I think the hardest thing is it can seem a little bit boring, but that's the beauty of like grandma herbalism and taking care of yourself so well, is I encourage everybody to get super excited about the boring basic things, because truly they are the things that are going to make the biggest difference to how you feel day to day, and how you're able to expand your practice into working with herbs in a really in-depth way, is being able to really intimately know yourself and take care of yourself, so that you have a really beautiful, strong foundation to jump off of. And you're just going to feel so good for it. You really will. And again, as you said, it can be the simplest thing. It doesn't have to be overthought. It can just be as simple as a nice cup of chamomile tea and a good show. So that's really fun. I like that suggestion.
Yeah. I'm like the queen of boring.
No, that's so good. And everyone needs to just embrace the boring. Okay, guys? We're embracing boring. So obviously we're talking about home herbalism. So herbs are going to play into this in some way. What are some of your top go-to remedies as a home herbalist that you love to keep on hand and make for your home and for your family to keep them well through the year? Are there any, like, is there one to three faves that you think are like a must-have in your home herbal first aid kit?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think we've got to break it up into areas. And the first is definitely, like you said, like herbal first aid. You know, as home herbalists, one of our first jobs is to care for any kind of small accidents that happen in daily life. So my absolute go-to is always a calendula salve. And if I want a little bit more added like antimicrobial power, it'll have yarrow in it or whatever else I've got that I've foraged around. So I just made a salve with yarrow, chickweed, and calendula, and I will always have some kind of calendula or first aid salve. You'll just use it multiple times a day. Like you can use it for bites, for stings and bites. You can use it for cuts and scrapes. You can use it as a lip balm if you make it a little bit harder. You can use it on a rash or dry skin or like pretty much anything that happens in life. My kids are like, oh, this thing happened. I'm like, go to the salve.
You know what to do.
I say that to them all the time. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? Because I'm like, I don't want to answer their question for them. I want them to actually think critically about it. So I'm always asking them questions like, what herb would you use for that?
You are Kat from Everyday Empowered after all. You are empowering people every day.
I do. And if you are my kids, you get pop quizzes as we're walking down the street. I'll be like, quick, what herb is that?
Oh my God. I do that to my husband. My husband gets the pop quizzes. My little boy will once he's old enough, for sure. I love that. Yeah.
So that's definitely, I think every home needs some version of a first aid salve. And like, I'm not a natural gardener, and if I can grow calendula, you can too. Like, it is so simple to grow. It is beautiful to work with. Like, you just feel happy being around calendula. It's definitely one that you're going to get the best, freshest quality from home grown. Even the best quality you can buy commercially, they're not as good as the home grown. So it's so satisfying, and you feel like a real genuine herbalist when you grow calendula.
And you can grow them in pots. I think I've grown them in pots before. Yeah. If you have to, like if you're in an apartment or something, you can still have a play and grow at least a few plants to have a go.
Yeah, and if you're we're coming into winter, like winter is calendula's growing season here in the subtropics, so it's a really good time to get started on calendula. And you only need like one plant. If you've only got one pot, you just need one plant, and the more you pick the flowers, the more it grows. It's like the epitome of abundance. Like, I just love calendula to work with.
Yeah, it's such a good one.
And just so anyone knows, I do have people who tell me they're like, oh, I'm collecting my calendula. I'm very like on top of it, conscientious, but they're only collecting the petals. And a lot of the medicine is actually in like the green bracts underneath the flower head. That's where the resinous medicine is. So if you're picking calendula yourself, make sure you pick the entire flower head, including the green parts underneath.
Yeah, very good advice.
Yeah. And check for caterpillars. I've learned all this the hard way. Or that part anyway.
Oh, I hate when you've got something drying and then you go back to it and it's got like little caterpillar poos everywhere and you're like, drat, where is it? That happens to me all the time. I'm like, man, where are you, sneaky little bugger? You're in there somewhere.
I know. Well, I didn't even know about it till I gave my friend this gorgeous tea blend, and she was like, Kat, there's a caterpillar in it.
Living his best life, having a feast.
I know. Okay, so yeah, that's number one. I think everyone should have like a first aid salve. Number two, I think everyone should have yarrow. Again, yarrow is this super simple herb to grow. You can grow it really easily in a pot. If I can grow it, you can too. And yarrow is the one you want to have on hand, or you can just buy yarrow as well if you don't want to grow it or can't. And it's the one that you use for bleeds, for any kind of cut that's bleeding. And so you can just, if you've got fresh yarrow, you can just make a quick spit poultice and put it on the wound. If you've got dried yarrow, you can grind it up, make it into a powder and put that in. You could put tinctured yarrow in there if that's what you had, although it will sting. Again, hard-won experience about putting tinctures in cuts.
Another piece of good advice. Again, I do that too. Like, I learn the hard way so that you don't have to. That's what I tell clients all the time. I make the mistakes so that you don't have to. You can bypass some of them. Not all of them, because it's good learning, but like some of them.
Some of them. But yeah, there's so many mistakes to make. So I think yarrow is just a really good all-round herb. And I mean, all of these herbs are so multi-purpose. Like, the reason they've been passed down in our lineage is because we tend to think of them in just one way, but like yarrow can be used for colds and flus. Like, it's in a famous cold and flu formula, the YEP, yarrow, elderflower, and peppermint. So it's beautiful support for fevers. It's also really good for the digestive system. It's good for the menstrual system and post childbirth. So there's a lot of, and that's, there's so many more. There's a lot of ways we can work with yarrow. And you can work with it in more of like a spiritual sense. Like, I haven't worked with it like this, but one of our local herbal teachers here, Alison, she was a guest speaker years ago for me for one of my early workshops, and she taught about yarrow, and she talks about yarrow for protection.
Yes, yes. I've used it in that way. Yes.
Okay. I have used it once, but I can't say I know, like, have experience of using it, but I did put it in like a heart ease blend, and I put in yarrow tincture for protection.
Beautiful.
What was your experience using it like that?
So many. I mean, so here we like a little bit of the woo. We like a little bit more of the energetics and like the spiritual uses of plants as well. And so Christy, who started this podcast, she actually had quite a few like space mists that you could use on your body, on your clothes, in your car, wherever, to use as a protective spray. To prevent like anything negative sticking to you through the day. Especially if you work in a people facing role for work, you are exposed to so many different people's energy through the day. So we've used it in that way quite a lot. And yeah, I would use it so we've talked on this podcast before about simmer pots. And this was actually an idea from another podcaster, Amy from Roselawn Cottage. Her podcast is awesome. And she talked about using a simmer pot, which I'm sure you know what a simmer pot is.
Yeah.
But then actually adding your protective herbs and then using the water from that to wash windows and doorways and your floors to use as a protective method for your home. So
Gorgeous.
I really loved that as well. And then, of course, you can, I believe the leaves of yarrow are somewhat edible too, aren't they?
Yeah, you can put them in salads.
Yeah, so there's so many ways to play and work with it. I also have seen people do, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but using a selenite knife or sword to like run over your body when you get in the door in the afternoon, just to cut away any of the juju you picked up through the day. And I feel like you could very much use a yarrow leaf in that way too.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I guess you can use, but yarrow's got that strong scent. So have you used like a yarrow mist before? Is that how you used it?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And did you notice a difference?
Well, I've only used it wasn't my number one pick. I liked her one that had sage, like clary sage and mugwort and things in it. So that's one that I use more so. But yeah, I did find it worked well for me, and I think it would be a really good one for children as well. We had a few teachers who used it in the classroom and things like that too. So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, lots of different ways to play with it. Really, your imagination is the limit. You can get creative with ways to incorporate it. I know you could also burn it, burn it dried as a loose incense. There's so many ways you could use it for protection.
Yeah. And there's also it's got a history of being used for divination. When they use the yarrow stalks in like the Chinese like I Ching, if that's how you pronounce it,
amazing.
and they would they'd use it for divination. So it's got that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. This is what I love about. I really love practicing bioregional herbalism, which means working with plants that grow or you can find as wild weeds or native medicine in your area. Because one, I think a lot of plants are fresher medicine when they're from your local area. They're often medicine that you need because they're living in the same environment and condition that you are. Like they're responding to the same, seasons and world and weather. But it also, in a way, it's kind of first world problem, right? But we have got access to so many things around the world that our ancestors would just be like mind blown at. But we're kind of like, because of that, I think we tend to stay really shallow with herbs. Like, we think that we need all of these herbs from all over the world, but really we have got so many amazing herbs growing just outside our doors. And if we just learn to work with those and build relationship with those herbs and to really learn all of the ways that they can support us, I think that's really strong, potent medicine. And I think sometimes, and it might be because I'm a grandma herbalist. So I like the boring things, but I just don't believe we need all these exotic super herbs. I don't think we need every adaptogen from every corner of Earth. Like, I'm pretty sure that yarrow is bloody amazing and it grows easily here and it's part of our lineage. And the more we can cultivate depth with that herb, the more the more confident we feel in our herb choices, the more experience we build with it. And I just think the more intuition we can bring to it because we just know whether it's the right herb or not. And like, you don't need all the herbs. Like, we can use yarrow in so many different ways and many of the herbs that we work with.
Yeah, I think if you speak to a lot of the greats, like I'm sure Rosemary Gladstar would have this opinion, to know a few herbs really well is so much more valuable and important than knowing, 200 herbs just a little bit. And, there's a place for that too, because if you are in a spot where you have access to a limited number of things, perhaps if you're traveling, it's good to have a vague idea, I think, of some plants. But really, a lot of people who work with herbs like to pride themselves on sustainability, but how sustainable is it if we are, importing herbs and herbs that aren't even native to our culture, to our space where we're living. And I also think it's a nice challenge. So if you're a person who finds that really difficult to just slow down and really focus on the things that are around you because it's boring, this is a great challenge to go, why is that? And am I being sucked into this fast-paced world that we're living in, where we have so much access to things and everything's fatty and exciting and, you know, shallow in a way? Like, how can we deepen our connection with the world around us? And I just filmed a podcast episode with Holly Moffat from Ignaria Wellness, and we were talking about witchcraft for children, actually, and it was very centered around seasonal living. And one thing we discussed a lot about was actually looking at how your connection with the outside world is such an important connection to have, and how really, if you have no other spiritual practice, just being able to witness the world around you as it changes through the seasons is one of the most important things you could learn to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think being able to actually grow or forage herbs ourselves, it has that capacity, like, to have connection with nature. Like, how many of us get herbs from overseas? We don't know what they look like in the native environment. We can't, we can't, like, I grow chamomile here in the winter. I just love it. Like, and it just,
I love chamomile.
I know, right? But when you're actually growing it, I don't know if you grow it, like, it smells so different. Like, it actually, and you just don't know that if you don't grow it yourself. And like the feeling that, it's like honey, like us, or they used to describe it like sweet apple. It smells appley, like a sweet, and it's like and just the feeling you get around being with the plants. Like, I know energetically how to work with some of the herbs because I know how I feel when I'm with them. And so there's so many ways, and you can learn you can learn some of their medicine based on, the environment that they like to grow in, or how they look, or their colors, or the shape of their leaves, their smell, their taste. So I teach a whole course around herbal tastes, because I really think that as home herbalists, we need to be using our whole bodies when we learn herbs. Like, we don't just learn herbs with our heads. We're not just learning out of books. We're not just taking tablets. We're actually using our whole bodies to understand our medicine and understand the plants that are right in front of us, and to have that relationship. And again, to build that intuition so that we do know what herbs to reach for on a daily basis.
Yeah, and coming from a clinical herbalism background, that is sorely missing from the degrees that are available here. We really don't cover that at all, and I think it's really it leads to a shallow practice of herbalism. It really does. I once had a lecturer tell me that she felt like I was shallow in my prescribing and in the way I was using the herbs in clinical practice when I was still in school. And at the time I was like, oh, shallow. But getting out of school and then learning about, and she obviously had more experience than what the degree was. Now, it's changed a lot since she studied. So to her, she was right. It was shallow in a sense, because I only knew what they were teaching me at the school. And I, have gone back and done so much practice and experience and learning myself since graduating. And now I practice in a completely different way to the way I did when I graduated. And if you're not studying, I think there's a lot of problems with the degree. That's another conversation. But for those who are getting to have their first experience be an experience of home herbalism and community-based herbalism, you get to learn in so much a richer way. Like, you learn herbs in a really comprehensive, holistic, all-encompassing way. And that's so beautiful and important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as well, like, just thinking about that difference between clinical and home herbalism, as home herbalists, we don't have the shelf space that clinical herbalists have. Like, honestly, I've got herbs in almost every room of my house, and I'm always like, oh God, where can I put this new remedy that's brewing, or this herb that I'm drying? And, we want to be really clever. We actually want to be very, we want to curate the herbs that we work with and be really intentional and choose ones that are going to serve us in a variety of ways, so that we can have that relationship with the herbs we work with. We can have that depth, and we know that we're going to have enough room for all of our remedies, because we're just not trying to like overstuff our shelves. Like, we're only, using the ones that we actually will work with. And I'm so passionate about home herbalists being you tailor it to your family, you tailor it to your home. Like your apothecary, your home apothecary will look completely different to mine because you're a different family. Like there'll be some that are common to all of us if we live in the same area, or some that are so multi-purpose and useful that they'll be common, like probably calendula and yarrow and elderflower and elderberry. But then if you know that you're more prone to coughs, you'll have cough herbs. If someone else is more prone to skin issues, they'll have more skin herbs. If someone else is more prone to gut issues, they'll have gut herbs. I love that way that home herbalism is absolutely unique in how and what we need. And I think that can really help us to cut down the overwhelm that comes with accessing all this information online, because we can just it's like I've never actually seen Star Wars, so this is a really irrelevant metaphor. But like we could be like Jedis with our like light. I know we go like Jedis with our light things, light
Sabers.
I don't even know the word. Lightsabers. Because we're just like all of this, information, which can feel super intimidating and overwhelming because you don't know where to start. But you can be like, poo, poo, poo. I know that's not my issue. Poo, poo. I'm going to go for this herb because it doesn't grow in my area. Like you can just discard all the stuff you don't need, cut through all the crap, and just be super laser focused on what's actually going to help you and what the next step is for you to take. I should really work on my metaphors though, and actually work with something I know.
You know what? So many people are gonna understand that though. I think we have a lot of Star Wars nerds out there. I'm not, but I do appreciate a good Star Wars metaphor. So good. I think what you said earlier about checking in with yourself as a starting point for learning how to understand the way that you work goes really beautifully with this also. Like, maybe spend time with herb, play with a herb, taste a herb, try a herbal tea. And then maybe have that same moment of sitting with it and going, how does this make me feel? Does it resonate with me? Does it make me feel really good? Or does it maybe it doesn't feel like it's for me? Because there are so many herbs that can have similar actions and work on the body in similar ways. But the energetics and the pattern and the vibration of that plant may not be suited to you. So another one might be better for you, and that comes a bit more into that like herbal energetics, but also like that more esoteric relationship with a plant thing. One might be, it might resonate with you. You might have an affinity for chamomile, right? But then there might be other digestive herbs that don't work well for you. Like maybe peppermint just is not for you. And your type of digestive complaint and what happens in your tummy might be better suited to something like chamomile. So that's really a good point for people too, I think. To use the same tip, use the same trick to, start to learn what herbs feel good in their body too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to just start slow. I think maybe this is, again, learning from my hard won experience of learning too many herbs too quickly and then having to basically go back and relearn everything I'd learned because I'd forgotten it all. Or just couldn't. Yeah, I know, right? Or like, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool fact, but which of the 10 herbs I've been learning about this week does it belong to? Like, that's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And I think as home herbalists, to cut down that overwhelm, to build that depth, to build that confidence and that sense of mastery, start with one herb and start with the herb that you hear about and like a little spark, it sparks something in you where you go, I want to learn more about that. Like start with that one, so you might have heard us mention a few of the herbs today. Which one of them, if any, have sparked that like, oh, I want to learn more about that? Because that could be your intuition. That could be you and the plant, communicating on some other level. And there's body wisdom there. It might have a message for you, or it just might be the medicine you need, or it might be trying to get your attention. Like I've had herbs be very extreme in trying to get my attention. So I had a herb in working with one of my kids. They had like a bit of a chronic health issue for a while after we lived in a moldy house. And this herb kept trying to get my attention. And I was like, okay, I get it. I'll work with you. I'll learn with you. And then one day as I was walking through the bush, it literally fell on my head.
What was it? Now we need to know. What was it?
Osnia.
Beautiful. Okay.
I love it. But it was very insistent. Like, it's time, you need to work with me.
And I've talked about that on here before, about more of that, how might you know that it's time to work with a certain plant, and they can be really in your face. And I think that's part of being really able to be in the moment and observational of the world around you, because if we keep missing it because we're too busy, it will get more in your face. My most recent experience with a plant spirit, I guess you could call it a plant spirit, we talk about it in that way sometimes, was with wild violet, and I had a little bit of mastitis, and my wild violet started to bloom, my sweet violet, sorry. And when I looked it up, because I kept popping into my head, and then I would see someone posting about it on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, this is really like coming up a lot. And I looked it up, and it's specifically for the type of mastitis that I had. It is indicated for that specifically. So it was perfectly keyed to what I needed at that time, and I just needed to pay attention.
Yeah. And there's often that saying that the plants that grow right outside of your door are the plants that you need. And so, you know, even just walking outside, getting a really good local field guide to weeds and learning what are the weeds that are outside your door and how can you work with them as food or as medicine, or even just getting to know their names. Like, I'm such a big believer that if we don't know the name of something, we can't have a relationship with it. And if we want to reclaim our belonging to the natural world, and if we want to reclaim our kind of, you know, place that if we're cared for by medicine, I think we have a responsibility to care for the medicine and to care for the environments where they grow. It starts with knowing the names. You know, it starts with having that relationship.
Yeah. I'm actually getting to go to the, I think I mentioned to you, the
I'm super
Island
excited.
Herb Gathering this year, and the theme is right relationship. So being able to practice and work in right relationship with the plants. And so that is exactly what you just mentioned.
God, you have to take a picture. You have to take a picture of me and just be like, this is Kat and she really wants to be here.
I can do that. I'm hoping I get to have some really good conversations, because they've just announced that Sage Popham is going to be there, and I'm very excited. I know I did get the heads up from someone who has inside scoop. And then it turned out to be true. So and Dr. Jackie Wilkins is going to be there from Zalish Medicines, and It's going to be a really cool group of people having a chat this year about right relationship with plants. And I think that that's something that even I could stand to learn a little bit more about. So I'm really excited to hear from people who have on this journey a little bit longer than me and have a bit more wisdom in this area. Because again, yeah. No, you go.
No, I was going to say, I think more and more strongly, I think that's where herbalism needs to progress to. You know, like herbalism has become so trendy, but it really is at the risk of becoming another commodity. And a commodity is just something we buy and sell and we don't care for, and we don't know anything about it. And in that sense, herbalism loses its beauty and its power and its effectiveness. And I think to be responsible herbalists, folk herbalists, community herbalists, clinical herbalists, we need to know that herbs are a gift and they're shared freely, but we need to take that gift with reverence and with gratitude and with joy. And part of that is feeling responsible then for the earth and where the plants are growing and for caring for them as well. And I think that, you know, that's a part of being a home herbalist. And that doesn't mean you need to do anything in particular. I think it's a relationship, like an attitude that comes from your heart. And I think that if you're guided by your heart and have that that attitude, you will take steps in daily life that honor that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important for people to know, because again, it's not exactly the exciting thing, but it's so important. It's so important. And are you in it for the right reasons? Because anybody can throw some internationally bought herbs that have been imported in a bowl and call it a tea blend. But is that actually going to nourish people in the way that they deserve? In the way, is it going to honor the plants in the way that they deserve as the beings that offer the medicine to us? Understanding. I think that's been a big reframe for me. Again, coming from a very clinical start, sort of. I kind of wasn't clinical, and then I was clinical, and now I'm a bit of both. But understanding that plants are not there for us to use as much as they're there for us to work with. And I'm still working on my language around making sure that I'm correcting myself if I say, oh, use this herb. No, actually work with this plant, because it's really important to have that relationship and respect them if we want to reclaim a bit more of an old tradition, which I think is super important. And I could go on a very woo-woo train with that with the Age of Aquarius, but we're basically in a time where we're either going to go full chip in the brain, or we can come back to community and start to work with each other, share knowledge, share skills. And I think that you and I are probably more in that second camp. So
because even though herbalism, like I describe as home herbalism, and so you can think of that as quite isolating, like in your home, but I really think that home herbalism is done in community with other people. You know, we are much stronger when we can share medicine together, when we can call for each other for advice, when you can say, hey, I'm growing this herb. Do you want some? You're growing that herb. Can I have some? Hey, you're really good at making that remedy. Can I have some? And swapping and sharing and bartering and teaching each other. And, you know, even just having making days. So we don't have to do it all alone, but we can go, hey, I'm making this. Do you want to come over? I'll make it together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
think it's
so fun.
community.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
we do.
seen you've done making days before, haven't you?
Yeah, I do a lot of events. So we do once a season. I haven't done it this year so far because I've been focusing on courses.
Hmm.
But once a season, we have community medicine making days, or we make
Mm.
medicine that we need for that season. And then we'll have other events, like we'll spend 2 hours just learning about a herb. So this is part of my herb folk group. It's like our monthly catch ups,
Cool.
and we just learn about herbal medicine together. And then once a year, because you were there last year, we have HerbFest, which is like our
Yes.
big annual celebration of herbal medicine on the
Yeah.
coast, but more regionally as well.
So herb folk, could you explain that to us? Is that something people could get involved in if they're local to you, if they're not local to you?
Oh
How does
yeah,
that
yeah.
work?
Anyone who's on the Sunshine Coast or in a drive of the Sunshine Coast, so people do travel for it. It's just it used to be monthly, but it's going to be a little bit more maybe seasonal at the moment as I put a bit more energy into courses. And it's just we pick a topic, and sometimes we spend 2 hours just learning about one herb, so that you can really develop a relationship with that herb. Sometimes it's more focusing on a remedy making technique, so we'll focus like a whole 2 hours just on learning about infused oils or making a salve, or maybe it'll be on like a medicine making circle where we make a few seasonal remedies. And everything I do is focused on community. It's focused on like hands-on practical learning. It's focused on you
Mm.
coming together and leaving with things that you can actually use in your daily life. So it's all
Yeah.
really geared to actually helping people.
So could they send you an email if they wanted to get involved with that, or is it on Facebook?
Yeah, so it's on my website's everydayempowered.com.au, and
Mm.
Instagram is everyday.empowered. And so
Yeah.
I've got news of my events. Now the algorithm on Instagram is like a wild card. So I really recommend people to join my newsletter as the best way to stay in touch.
Yeah.
Um, or to
Yeah,
just
I
check the
hate losing
website.
people that I love. I hate losing people that I love in my feed. So you shared a
Yeah.
couple of remedies with us. So we've talked about right relationship, and we've talked about building a relationship with plants and potentially growing a couple of your mainstay herbs that are a little bit, I wouldn't say easier to grow, but tend to be more friendly to grow for beginners. So chamomile is definitely one of them. Calendula is another one. Yarrow I've found really quite easy to grow. And I don't find that any of them are particularly prone to taking over, because that's something I'm really conscious of, is not introducing new species into native areas that are going to take over and cause a problem. St.
Yeah.
John's wort can be like that. Mugwort can be like that. Elder is another one. So I'm just really conscious of that when I'm planting. But generally speaking, how do you go about finding your herbs? Do you order online? Do you forage, wildcraft? And how much of it do you grow? So if people were wanting to start to dabble and start to build a relationship with plants, what's your process with that and doing it ethically?
Yeah, I do a little bit of all of them. So I'll buy
Mm-hmm.
online, I'll grow, and I'll forage. Like, for anyone who is at the beginning of their journey, and you've heard us talking about, we kind of been bagging out buying like plants from overseas and not having a relationship. Like, I don't expect that that is your beginning point. Like, you and I have both been doing that for a long time, and that
Mm.
is like our orientation. Like I say, home herbalism is a way of relating to life. Like it's a
Mm.
heart attitude. It's not just using herbs. But I
Mm.
don't expect people to start there. Like if you
No.
just want to buy calendula online and you're working with the herb, like that's totally fine. So if anyone's feeling
Mm.
like a little bit of like
Yeah.
embarrassment
No.
or shame and you're like, oh,
I
just
buy
buy it
herbs
online.
online. I buy
Yeah,
herbs
yeah,
online. I would not be able to grow the amount that I
exactly.
need for my business. But in saying that, I think what we were more pointing to is that it's important to have respect for the plants that you're working
Yeah,
with, rather than
I agree too.
going like it's toxic, you can't buy any online. It's more just like,
No, no,
okay,
no.
make sure you're conscious about the fact that you are buying them, and maybe I always try to grow at least one plant. That's a practice I like to do. So
Yeah,
especially if they're more, I guess, specialized or maybe not native to here. So white sage, if I wanted to use white sage, I had to learn to have that relationship with the plant and grow it. And now I have
yeah,
two thriving plants, and I've talked about it before. And so anytime I want to start working with a herb that maybe doesn't naturally grow around me, I feel like even if I'm buying them online, I like to just dabble with growing at least one, just so I can see how hard it is, how difficult it is, whether the plant thrives where I live, and just build that relationship, even though I may not be growing all of the plant that I use. But it's still
yeah.
nice to at least even look up, oh, I wonder if this would grow in my area, just to start to familiarize yourself with that plant and what they like. And then, you can still buy online and have a relationship at the same time.
Yeah, and I think as well, like it's just about it's being where you are and just moving forward with grace. You know, like we know what we know what we know, and then we have capacity to get deeper as we go.
Hmm.
So yeah, I grow what grows easily here. I buy from a few different suppliers online, depending how much I need. So there's a few companies that have like organic Australian grown or foraged herbs. There's a few companies that do get them from international but have good quality. There's ones that you can get seedlings. So I'm actually quite a lazy gardener. Like I buy my seedlings from Mudbrick Cottage often, or I get other people to grow my seeds for me.
I love mud brick.
Because
Yeah.
again, I know it's knowing where you want to cut corners or save time. And I know that it's a
Hmm.
lot cheaper to start your seeds from scratch, but I'm just not into it.
Yeah.
So it's finding what works for you. That's one of my catchphrases. I love it. Like find what works for you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
own it. Yeah. And then so I've got a couple of good foraging books. Like I love wildcrafting. I think that you need to have the right ethics for it. So know
Mm.
how to ask permission if that's part of your practice and give thanks. Know how to completely 100% identify the herb that you're working with or want to
Hmm.
forage, knowing if there's poisonous lookalikes in your area, knowing that you only forage if there's enough plants. Like if there's only one plant or two plants, then that's not for you to take because that plant needs it for itself and it needs to be there for the other creatures as well.
Mm.
So knowing that you only forage if there's enough, and then you only take like 1 in 10 plants or 1 in 7 is a rule or something.
Yeah.
But I love working with local weeds. Like they're abundant. They're starting to be abundant now with the turn of season. So
Yeah. And how did you learn how to wildcraft safely? Are there any resources? I know you know Heidi quite well. Heidi was a lecturer of mine.
oh, I
And
see.
yeah, and I interviewed her for a magazine I wrote for once upon a time. But uh, I know she does some plant walks and some wildcrafting kind of courses. So how did you learn, and how would people go about wanting to learn how to do it well and safely?
Yeah, well, I learned from Heidi, and now I'm lucky enough to be working with her and being mentored in this by her, which is like a dream come true. And so I'm going to be running a bioregional course next year, teaching people how to
Cool.
grow and forage herbs with that, and like
Amazing.
develop this relationship over like a longer journey. It might be like a 3 or 6 months course where you can really learn to get
Mm.
to know the plants that grow in our area in the subtropics. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, Heidi's got a book, Wildcraft. Depending what part of Australia you are in, there are some other wildcrafting books or teachers. So it can be really fun to learn. We share stuff online on Instagram, and I'm going to be doing that a little bit more with Heidi. And Heidi's going to be sharing more as her second book comes out. So that can be a really good way to visually see the plants and get a good
Yeah.
plant ID. The weedy one, he's in
Yes.
Sydney. He's got a great website. I'm blanking on his name right now, though. Diego?
Yeah, we
Is it
can.
Diego?
I'm not sure. We can definitely look it up, and I can share it on Instagram for people who want to know.
Yeah, I'm totally blanking, but I'm pretty sure it's Diego. But yeah, when you just have a brain fart moment. But he's got a great website with lots of ID points. And then, like, you might just be able to pick up a local weed guide for your area. Often your council will put
Mm.
out weeds, and often they're like, oh, you have to take this one out. But you can be like,
Yes.
I can use that for medicine, but I'm just going to
I've
use your
totally
ID
used those
points.
before. Like,
Yeah.
this is what is it, like an invasive weed and we hate it, poison it all. And I'm like, great, now I know where that grows. And,
Yeah.
that's one of the great things about using weeds as medicine, right? That's also enough for another entire podcast episode. But working with weeds and more invasive plants is being able to control the population and make medicine at the same time to like help the earth, especially if it was introduced. I think if it wasn't growing there natively to begin with, it can be helpful. And then that's the kind of plant you can take plenty of because it's not supposed to be there. It's not good for the local flora and fauna, and you can make medicine from it. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
But I know that definitely with wildcrafting, there's lots of ethical considerations and of course also safety considerations. You definitely have to be sure, as you said, that you know exactly what you're picking. And something I see a lot of people talk about as well is not taking more than you absolutely are 100% sure you can use, because
Yeah.
we want to prevent waste. And that's another thing with only focusing on a few herbs to start with and knowing what works really well for your family is you're not wasting remedies because you've made too
Yeah.
much and you could never ever use it all, and maybe it's not relevant to what you need. So it
Yeah.
all comes in together with that sustainability part of it.
Yeah, and there's a few other safety rules, like you don't harvest near main road, you don't harvest underneath like drip lines of roofs, or there could be contamination coming from the gutters. You don't
Yes.
harvest in areas that have been sprayed or where there's been a lot of dog wee.
I was going to say, not
So
near posts or fire
yeah,
hydrants.
yeah. So there's a
If it
few
looks
things.
yellow, just leave it there.
Yeah, but the most of the good wildcrafting books, like Heidi's got a great wildcrafting book, and she'd cover that in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of information online.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And so, what else? What are you offering? And I know that Sunny Coast HerbFest is coming up too. So, what are the courses that you're offering and ways to work with you one on one? And then let's talk briefly about HerbFest as well, so people know what's going on.
Okay, all right. Come and do it because it's super fun, guys. We'll start with HerbFest because it's on my mind. So HerbFest is Sunday, June 16, and it is like our biggest celebration of the year. Like I just love everyone to come together and just be blown away by how big our herbal community is, because a lot of people tell me that they feel really isolated and they feel like, you know, none of their friends are interested in herbal medicine, or they didn't realize there was anyone else like them out there. And then they come to HerbFest and they're like, whoa, like there's hundreds and hundreds of people here. And you know, they're all plant lovers or at least plant curious. And we've got speakers, we've got demonstration tents. This year, we're going to be having activities you can get involved with. You can make your own herbal infused vinegar and you'll get to take it home. There's activities for the kids. We've got like a thriving herbal businesses market, which you were part of last year, and is just such a gift to be able to connect with these, like, you know, small batch passionate herb crafters or growers, and you know, get to chat with them about their products and find out the integrity and the skill with which they make them.
And I loved one thing I will just say, some feedback for you is the amazing thing about it that I found was the amount of diversity. So there were a lot of people there that I would have gone, I would never have guessed that you were into herbs, interested in herbs in any way, like some biker dudes and like, you know, like a really wide range of people. And I think that that's so amazing to see that it really is for everybody. It is everyday medicine for the people, for every person.
Yeah, exactly. And this year the theme is kitchen medicine. So it's really practical. It's the first year. It's like a big year.
Home herbalism.
It is. And it's like the first year we've got speakers coming from interstate. So that feels really nice to be able to like bring fresh enthusiasm and ideas into my community. We've got a lot more people traveling for it this year. So coming from, you know, much, you know, bigger region around the Sunshine Coast. So it's really exciting to see HerbFest, you know, being able to support the community in that way and being able to support the amazing herbal businesses and the amazing educators and really help people. Oh, we've got someone teaching on how to grow and use native herbs, which is really exciting. I just love all the speakers.
Needed.
Yeah, it's totally needed.
They're all going to be amazing. I think it's all going to be amazing. And like, again, how fantastic. And thank you for taking the initiative to start it, because I think it's becoming quite an important part of our local herbal community and now the broader herbal community in Australia as well.
Yeah, thanks.
It's really needed.
Yeah, I love bringing people together. Like one of my life mottos is that life is better together.
Absolutely. I think it's a great motto to have.
Yeah, and we need each other and we need to be inspired and we need to like just, I don't know, be amongst friends. Like and the reason the HerbFest is amazing is because of our community. Like everyone who comes there is lovely. And everyone just loves the vibe and everyone just loves being there and chatting to everyone. So it's just, you guys are all amazing. So that's what makes HerbFest what it is.
I'm so sad I'm not going to be a stallholder this year, but it's because I'm going away and I just can't. With a baby, it's just not practical.
No, you're going to have a good,
like 2 days later. So
you're going to have a good trip. You're going to have a really exciting trip.
As a patron, because I think sometimes that's really fun to not be working something like this, to be able to experience it all. My husband saw so many talks last year. He was like, "Oh man, you missed this really good one." I'm like, "What about this trade-off thing? You're supposed to be helping me." And he just went and had the best time ever. So he's like, "Oh, I met this person at the store. You have to go chat to them later." So it'll be nice to be able to walk around and actually experience it myself. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, make sure you come and find me.
Yeah, and so tickets are available on your website for that?
Yeah, tickets are available on my website, everydayempowered.com.au. It's only $20 for the whole day. Of all of the speakers and everything. So I make it as cheap as possible, and kids are free, and we've got kids activities and food and coffee and everything you need to have a good day out. And you can also get tickets on the door, but I encourage people to get them online if they can, because that way we can wave you in faster. Like it's a lot of people to get in at once. And so that's kind of like our big celebration. And then I run courses online and in person. Like a big thing that I want to try and do is help people figure out how to apply this in their own life and figure out, you know, like we get a lot of information online, but a lot of it is piecemeal. Like we get little fragments and we just don't know how to pull it all together. And so in my work, I really like to help people pull it all together and then learn how to apply that in their own life and how to bring that back to their own bodies. So in February, I run a course about embodied herbalism, herbal tastes. And so that's all about building that taste relationship, because taste can tell us so much. And maybe we should do a whole other podcast on that, because I teach for 4 weeks.
I would love to talk about that, because it is something that I've been thinking a lot more about lately. Because again, going through the study that I did, my traditional, like my more like, I guess westernized study, you get to taste some tinctures, that's it. And you miss so much, and it really interrupts your relationship with a plant, because you can really tell so much about what a plant can do for you just by how it affects your body when you taste it on your tongue. You'll know if something's a bitter, you'll know about it. And your mouth will start to salivate and your stomach will start to gurgle, and you know it's a bitter.
Yeah.
So it's such a key part. And so I saw your course being promoted and it looks amazing. So everybody should just go do it. If you're a beginner, it's such a good place to start.
Yeah, and it's so fun because we run it like a conversation, like it's just a yarn, and we taste as we go. Like the best way to learn is through direct experience. And so that course is all built on tasting, and it's fascinating. And this is the power of community learning, because everyone's like, that one was disgusting for me. And someone else is like, well, I love it. And someone else is like, well, I felt it in my tummy. And someone else is like, I felt it in my head. We learn so much just from getting people to tell us how they felt when they tasted it. And I help you notice what the sensations are. And then half the time the people themselves have taught the course, because I'm like, well, you guys already picked up all the indications of how that plant is going to work in your body. Like, it's so amazing how clever we are within our bodies already. So that is just a really fun, really fun practical course. Yeah, so that's herbal tastes. And then I teach, we're doing one at the moment called Building Immunity, which is all about like having your own, you know, cold care, winter wellness kind of protocol. So we introduce you to 6 amazing immune herbs. We teach you about the immune system. We teach when to use them, when not to use them. We teach you how to make your own remedies. We teach you, like, you leave with your own protocol for like your go-to sheet of remedies to use during a cold and knowing exactly when and how to use them. So that's super practical for home herbalists.
Yeah, I know a lot of people will be really interested in that.
Yeah. And we teach through case studies as well. So again, it's going back to, it's not just knowing the knowledge, because we do, you know, some of us as we go along, we pick that up, but we just don't know how to apply it. We don't really know how to make sense of it. Like, when would I choose this herb over this herb? What do I do in this situation? So it's really practical in helping you figure out what to do in your own home.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got Herb Folk, which is our like one-off kind of events. And then I'm developing some more courses at the moment, which I can't wait. So the bioregional course is coming next year, helping you learn how to like grow and forage in our area and develop that more intuitive relationship with the herbs and learn like basic remedy making skills. Just so much. I got literally so much, and I'm super excited. I've been going through, even though I'm like busy with HerbFest, I've been going through this like ideation, like every day I've got a new idea, and I'm like, oh God, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. So there's lots coming.
Yeah, and you offer herbal kits as well, so people can make their remedies at home with herbs that you supply, correct? And recipes.
Yeah, I do. That was definitely something I learned from my own experience of learning herbs, was that I bought so many herbs, I wasted so many herbs, I used them once and didn't know how to use them a bunch of ways. So we just want to make it as simple as possible. So we've got DIY remedy kits that people can use to make their own remedies at home. And it's, people use it with their kids, it's really fun and really practical. And I get so much beautiful stories from people all the time about
puppy.
I got a little puppy on me, it's fun.
Yeah.
So check them out.
Super cool. And so they can find you on your website, everydayempowered.com.au. They can find you on Instagram, everyday.empowered, and connect with you and get working with you in some way. And everybody should come to HerbFest. I think that you should all show up and we can all hang out together.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun if your podcast, you can all have like a little meetup, like all meet near there's going to be a chai tent. You could all have like, okay, 11 o'clock, we're all going to like have a little meetup.
That would be fun. If anybody wants to do that, definitely let me know. I'll see. I know we have people who listen from all over the world, so it's just going to depend if they're local. But if you are, then you should come along and we can hang out at the chai tent. That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for sharing all of this information and wisdom and your experience and how you got started and how people can start to work with plants in this way in their own homes and with their own families in a way that makes a lot of sense for them. I think pointing out that this is a very individualized practice and there's not we're not just looking at an article and going, oh, that herb does these 5 things, cool. Not for me today. It very well might be for you, but it's all about that personal practice and really knowing yourself first, and then building those relationships with these plants and finding what resonates and really what you have an affinity for. And that's going to be the best medicine for each individual person. So that was really special and important. And I'm really excited for people to get involved in what you're doing. And thank you again for putting so much forth into the herbal community and really supporting people on their journeys. And it was just so amazing to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. I've had the nicest conversation. We'll have to catch up again because you've said so many interesting things. I'm like, that is so right. Like, let's go deeper on that topic because that's a huge one.
It's so hard. You got us, such a short amount of time, but I would love to have you back, and I'm sure everybody else is going to think the same thing. Bring Kat back and let's talk more herb things. So we can definitely organize that. And thank you for being here, and I'll see you at HerbFest.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I can't wait.
Thank you, Kat.
Bye.